In a move that stunned the nation, the Supreme Court delivered a rare, unanimous decision on gun rights. All 9 justices, liberal and conservative, agreed on a pivotal issue. The government cannot strip someone's Second Amendment rights based solely on their status as a drug user. This consensus was unexpected, especially after years of divisive rulings on gun laws. The case challenged a decades-old federal law banning gun ownership for anyone using illegal drugs. Instead of upholding or striking down the law outright, the court redefined its limits with precision. The justices signaled a new approach, seeking clarity and stability in Second Amendment cases. Their decision arrives amid national tension over firearms and confusion in lower courts after the 2022 Bruin ruling. The court's message: rights can't be revoked based on identity or habits alone. There must be evidence of real danger. This principle, now endorsed by all 9 justices, sets a new standard for government restrictions on fundamental liberties. The ruling's impact will ripple far beyond gun control, reshaping how constitutional rights are protected. For millions of Americans, the decision forces a national re-examination of who is truly too dangerous to own a gun. It marks a landmark moment in American law, redefining the balance between public safety and individual rights. Gun confiscation laws are among the most hotly debated in America, pitting the right to bear arms against the need for public safety. These laws often target people with felony convictions, domestic violence restraining orders, or severe mental health issues. The core debate: should the government be able to take away gun rights based on someone's status, or only after proven dangerous actions? Gun rights advocates warn that broad laws can punish people without a crime or due process, threatening constitutional protections. Supporters of gun control argue that waiting for violence is too late. Clear warning signs should justify temporary firearm removal. The Supreme Court's recent ruling zeroed in on this tension. Is being a drug user enough to lose your Second Amendment rights? The law in question didn't require proof of intoxication or misuse, just the status of drug use. The court scrutinized this, clarifying that status alone isn't enough for the government to revoke a constitutional right. Instead, there must be evidence of actual danger or misconduct. This decision sets a new limit on how far status-based gun restrictions can go. It's a turning point in the ongoing debate over liberty, safety, and due process. The law at the heart of this case banned anyone using illegal drugs from owning a gun, regardless of how often they used, or whether they'd ever acted dangerously. For decades, this was seen as a reasonable safety measure. But after the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, which demanded historical precedent for modern gun laws, old assumptions were upended. Enter Ali Hamani, a Texas man charged after police found marijuana and a pistol in his home. He admitted to using marijuana, but there was no evidence he was ever intoxicated while handling the gun. Hamani's lawyers argued that historically, only people actively intoxicated or misusing firearms were disarmed, not all users of intoxicants. The Fifth Circuit agreed, ruling the ban unconstitutional as applied to Hamani and forcing the Supreme Court to weigh in. The case drew national attention, especially after Hunter Biden was convicted under the same law. The stakes were high. The justices weren't just deciding Hamani's fate, but the constitutionality of a law affecting thousands, including the president's son. The court's review would determine if status-based bans could survive under the new, stricter Second Amendment test. The outcome would set a precedent for all similar cases nationwide. The nation watched as the court prepared to make history. At the Supreme Court, both sides made their case. The government argued that habitual drug users pose a unique risk when armed, citing impaired judgment and public safety. They pointed to historical laws disarming habitual drunkards as precedent. Hamani's lawyers countered that the law punished status, not conduct. There was no evidence Hamani was dangerous or misused his firearm. They argued that founding-era laws only targeted those actively intoxicated or behaving dangerously, not all users. The defense insisted the Second Amendment protects all citizens unless there's proof of actual threat. The justices pressed both sides on the difference between status and conduct, and whether history supported such a broad ban. The debate centered on whether the government could disarm people for private habits, or only for dangerous actions. The court was tasked with drawing a new line between public safety and individual rights. Their decision would clarify the limits of government power under the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court delivered a rare 9-0 verdict. The federal law, as written, went too far. The justices agreed that simply being a drug user isn't enough to lose your Second Amendment rights. The government must show a direct link between drug use and actual danger. The court's opinion was clear. Restrictions on fundamental rights must be narrowly tailored and based on real threats, not broad categories. Historical laws only disarm those who were actively and dangerously intoxicated, not everyone who used intoxicants. The court didn't strike down the entire law, but set a higher bar for enforcement. The government can still prohibit gun ownership for drug users in specific dangerous situations, like being armed while intoxicated or after violent behavior. Blanket bans based on status alone are unconstitutional. This decision reaffirms due process and the core principles of the Second Amendment. It provides clarity for courts and lawmakers nationwide. The ruling marks a significant shift in how gun laws will be written and enforced. This unanimous decision stands apart from the court's recent, often divided gun rulings. Unlike the sharply split Bruin case, this verdict shows the justices can find common ground on Second Amendment issues. The court signaled a more balanced approach, building on recent rulings that allow for some flexibility in modern gun laws. The justices looked at the principles behind historical regulations, not just exact matches. The ruling didn't give all drug users unrestricted gun rights, nor did it eliminate the government's power to regulate firearms for safety. Instead, it drew a careful line. Rights aren't absolute, but neither is government power. This middle ground may signal a shift away from all-or-nothing battles toward a more stable legal framework. Recent decisions show the court is willing to uphold some gun regulations, if they're justified, and don't punish entire groups. The new standard demands evidence-based restrictions, not broad prohibitions. This ruling is the clearest sign yet of a more nuanced, practical approach to gun law. It sets a precedent for future cases and legislative debates. The court is charting a new path for balancing rights and safety. The immediate impact: federal prosecutors can't convict someone just for using drugs and owning a gun. They must now prove the person's drug use makes them dangerous, raising the bar for prosecution. State and local laws mirroring the federal ban are now vulnerable to challenge and may need rewriting. Legislatures will have to focus on dangerous conduct, not just status, in their gun laws. This could spark new legal battles and legislative changes nationwide. For gun owners, especially in states where marijuana is legal, the ruling offers new protection, so long as there's no evidence of danger. The decision reinforces that rights can't be revoked without due process and proof of threat. But questions remain. What evidence is enough to show someone is dangerous? Lower courts will now define these boundaries, case by case. The legal landscape for gun rights and regulation is entering a new era. The Supreme Court's unanimous ruling has reshaped American gun law. The government can't ban gun ownership based solely on drug use. It must prove real danger. This shift prioritizes evidence and due process over broad bans. Americans should watch how federal and state authorities respond. New guidance, new laws, and new court battles are coming. The decision will be tested in lower courts, shaping the future of gun rights and restrictions. Key questions remain. What counts as dangerousness and how will other status-based bans fare? Another major case, Wolford versus Lopez, is pending and could further clarify the court's direction. This ruling shows even a divided court can unite on fundamental rights. The key takeaway: the government must justify any restriction on liberty with clear, specific evidence. The next chapter in America's gun debate is just beginning.